I'm sitting in a police station conference room, and my daughter-in-law's face is on the screen of a detective's laptop, frozen mid-smile at what she thought was a private family dinner. The detective just asked me if I'm ready to make a formal statement. My hands won't stop shaking. Not from fear, from rage I've been swallowing for 3 years. Because that smile, that sweet daughter-in-law smile everyone in our Philadelphia church sees every Sunday, is the same smile she wore when she leaned close during our anniversary dinner last month and whispered in my ear, so soft nobody else could hear, "Rest in peace, Dorothy." Like she was practicing, like she was rehearsing for my funeral. And my own son, my Benjamin, the boy I raised alone after his father died, sat right there cutting his steak and pretended not to notice. But let me back up, because you need to understand how I got here. How a 71-year-old woman who used to organize the Easter breakfast at Community Baptist Church for 20 years ends up in a police station with evidence of her own family trying to erase her from existence. It was a Tuesday morning in January when I realized how small my world had become. I was standing at the bus stop on Route 413, just past the cluster of mobile homes that marks the edge of Philadelphia's rural outskirts. Wide open sky above me, frozen ground below, and grocery bags at my feet because I don't drive anymore. Or rather, because they convinced me I shouldn't drive anymore. The cold was the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there, the kind that makes you wonder if you'll ever feel warm again. Winter out here isn't like winter in the city. It's quieter, lonelier. The cold keeps you inside, and the windows fog up from the warmth of your own breath, and you start to forget there's a world beyond those fogged-up panes. I was wearing my golden mustard sweater, the one that reminds me of autumn, of better seasons. I've had it for 15 years, and it still fits, though everything else about me seems to be shrinking. My world, my voice, my presence in my own life. I watched the same 3 cars pass on the empty road. Martha Henderson in her Buick, heading to her daughter's place. Tom Wilson's pickup truck, rust spreading across the bed. And then a champagne gold Lexus LS, the kind of car that doesn't belong out here, the kind of car that made me think about all the money I used to have before I started signing things. That Lexus. I think about it sometimes when I can't sleep, not because I want it, but because it represents something. Freedom, mobility, the ability to just drive away. My modest ranch house with its chain-link fence and small yard sits about a quarter mile from that bus stop. I could see it from where I stood, or I could when I still lived alone, before they moved in to help me. That's what my son said. "Mom, you need help. We're worried about you. Let us move in, just temporarily, just until you're steadier." That was 3 years ago. They're still there. I'm still unsteady, apparently. When I got home that Tuesday, there was fresh cornbread cooling on the counter. I'd made it that morning because my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, mentioned she had a craving. I used to bake for pleasure. I was known for my cornbread at church potlucks, my chess pie at Easter. Now I bake because it's expected. Because if I don't, I hear about it later. Not directly. Never directly. Just small comments. "Mom's getting forgetful. She used to make cornbread every week. Remember when she used to contribute?" I touched the cross necklace I've worn since my baptism 43 years ago. The metal was cold against my fingertips, cold like everything else that winter. I used to sing hymns in the church choir every Sunday, lead soprano. I had a strong voice, clear and true. Sister Margaret always said I could have sung professionally if I'd wanted to. But I haven't been to choir practice in 8 months. They told me I was too tired. They told me Sister Margaret was just being polite, that my voice wasn't what it used to be, that people were starting to talk. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just making a fool of myself. You're probably thinking I should have seen it earlier. You're probably already angry at me for being so blind. Trust me, I'm angry at myself too. But you have to understand something about being 71 and alone. You start to doubt everything. Is your memory really failing? Are you really as capable as you think? When the people you love most tell you something often enough, it becomes your truth. On the kitchen table that day, next to where I set down my grocery bags, was the stack of unpaid bills held together with a rubber band. Red notices, final warnings. For a house I'd owned outright for 30 years. For credit cards I didn't remember opening. For loans on cars I didn't drive. Benjamin had explained it all to me so patiently. The house needed repairs, major repairs. The roof, the foundation. If we didn't act fast, I could lose everything. And since his credit wasn't great, would I mind co-signing? Just this once. To protect my investment. I signed. Of course I signed. He's my son. That happened 4 times. 4 different loans. 4 different explanations, each one more urgent than the last. And somehow my bank account, the one with the Social Security checks and the small pension from my late husband's factory job, was always empty. They handled the finances now, for my own protection. Because I'd gotten confused about a payment once, or so they said, and they didn't want me to lose the house. The house I now owed $200,000 on. But I trusted God, fate, or time would resolve it eventually. That was my belief system, you see. Not just faith in divine intervention, though I had that too, but deeper than that. The belief that good people are rewarded, that family is sacred, that mothers sacrifice and children honor that sacrifice, that suffering has a purpose and God is testing me, and if I just endure, if I just pray harder, if I just trust more completely, everything will make sense. I prayed every night on my knees beside my bed. I prayed for patience. I prayed for understanding. I prayed for Benjamin and Vanessa to find their way, to prosper, to be happy. I prayed to be a better mother, a less burdensome mother, a mother who didn't complain or question or make trouble. I never prayed for myself. It didn't occur to me that I was allowed to. You know what I sacrificed? Not just money, not just my house or my credit or my savings. I sacrificed my identity. I forgot who I was before them. Dorothy Richardson, choir soloist. Dorothy Richardson, volunteer coordinator at Community Baptist. Dorothy Richardson, the woman who organized not just the Easter breakfast, but the summer barbecue and the Christmas pageant and the monthly food drive. Dorothy Richardson, who raised Benjamin alone after his father died when he was 7. Who worked 2 jobs, cleaned houses during the day, and did bookkeeping at night. Who put him through community college, who never missed a parent-teacher conference or a baseball game or a school concert. That Dorothy Richardson had been strong, capable, respected. But they erased her, slowly, carefully, deliberately. They told me I never did those things quite right, that people pitied me, that I was embarrassing myself. Benjamin would sigh and say, "Mom, I love you, but you have to understand how it looks. You're 71 years old still trying to run everything at church. People are starting to worry." Vanessa would touch my arm with such concern and say, "Dorothy, sweetie, maybe it's time to let the younger women take over. You've done your part. You deserve to rest." Rest. That word kept coming up. You deserve to rest. You need to rest. You should take it easy. Rest, 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 like they were putting me to sleep. My old friends from church stopped calling. When I asked Benjamin about it, he said they were busy with their own lives, that I shouldn't take it personally. But I found out later, much later, that Vanessa had been telling people I was struggling with dementia, that I got confused easily, that phone calls upset me. She did it so kindly, with such concern in her voice, that nobody questioned it. They just stopped calling. They didn't want to upset me. Sister Margaret tried. She came by the house twice to check on me. Both times, Vanessa answered the door and explained that I was resting, that I wasn't feeling well, that maybe she should call first next time. Sister Margaret never came back. I didn't even know she'd been there until months later. They needed me to stop going to choir practice because someone had to watch the house. Strange things had been happening in the neighborhood, they said. Break-ins. They didn't want to leave the house empty, so I stayed home on Wednesday nights while Benjamin and Vanessa went out to dinner, to the movies, to visit friends I wasn't invited to meet. They needed my Social Security checks to cover family expenses. Just temporarily. Just until Benjamin's new job started. Just until Vanessa's promotion came through. Just until the debt was paid down. Always just until. Never permanent, never forever. Just for now. They needed me to co-sign loans, to put their cars in my name because their credit was damaged from medical bills, from student loans, from bad luck, to list their debts as mine because the interest rates would be better, to sign documents I didn't fully understand because Benjamin explained them so patiently and I didn't want him to think I was senile, and I did it all, every single thing they asked, because I thought this was what mothers do. I thought sacrifice was love. I thought if I just gave enough, trusted enough, loved enough, they would finally be okay. They would finally be stable. They would finally stop needing so much. But they never stopped needing. The needs just got bigger. If you're listening to this and thinking I was stupid, I won't argue with you. I was. But I was also lonely and scared and convinced that I had no one else. That's what they told me. Mom, we're all you have. We're the only ones who care. Everyone else has moved on with their lives. But we're here. We'll always be here for you. That should have been comforting. Instead, it was a cage. The truth came on a Thursday afternoon in March through technology. My grandson, 16-year-old Marcus, the one I barely got to see anymore because he was always busy with school, left his laptop open on my kitchen table. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. I was just cleaning, wiping down the surface like I do every day, and I needed to move the laptop. When I picked it up, the screen lit up. Group chat, family group chat, without me in it. I should have closed it. I should have set it down and walked away. But something made me look. Maybe it was the message preview I saw. Maybe it was divine intervention. Maybe I was just tired of being in the dark. I started reading, and I couldn't stop. Messages going back 2 years, hundreds of them. My son writing about how much longer they'd need to keep up the act. How I was more gullible than he'd expected. How it was easier than they'd thought to get me to sign things. Vanessa responding with laughing emojis, saying they should have done this years ago. Marcus chiming in occasionally, asking when they could sell the house, when they could finally cash out. My hands started shaking. The laptop screen blurred. But I kept reading. Plans to sell my house once they got me into a nursing home. They'd already researched facilities, already figured out which ones had Medicaid beds, already determined that I'd qualify once they'd drained every asset I had. They joked about power of attorney, about how Benjamin would be able to make all my medical decisions, about how easy it would be to claim I wasn't competent. There were discussions about my life insurance policy, $25,000, not much, but enough to pay off one of the loans they'd taken out in my name. Vanessa wrote, "The sooner the better. She's not getting any younger, and neither are we." My vision tunneled. My chest felt tight. But I kept scrolling because I needed to see it all. I needed to know how deep the betrayal went. And then I found the message that shattered everything. The one from Vanessa, dated exactly 1 month ago, the day after our anniversary dinner. OMG. So last night at Mom's anniversary dinner, I leaned over during dessert and whispered, "Rest in peace," right in her ear. Like I was rehearsing for her funeral. She just smiled and patted my hand. She didn't even get it. "How much longer do we have to keep this up?" Benjamin's response. "As long as it takes. Stay focused." Marcus, "That's cold, Mom, even for you." Vanessa, "Hey, she's the one who believed everything we told her." "Not my fault she's so trusting. Besides, we're doing her a favor. She can't manage on her own. Better us than some stranger taking advantage of her." I remember that moment, that dinner. It was supposed to celebrate 35 years since my husband died, since I'd chosen to keep going for Benjamin's sake. I'd made pot roast, his favorite. Vanessa had brought wine. We'd sat around my kitchen table, the one my husband built, and I'd felt so grateful to have family close. Grateful not to be alone on a hard anniversary. The table had been set with my good plates, the ones with the blue flowers around the rim that I only bring out for special occasions. I'd spent the afternoon cooking, my hands remembering the rhythms my mother taught me, peeling potatoes, trimming the roast, chopping carrots into perfect rounds. The kitchen had filled with steam and the smell of cooking meat, and for a few hours I'd felt useful again. Needed. Like the old Dorothy who fed people and brought them together. I'd even put on my pearl earrings, the ones my husband gave me for our 10th anniversary. They felt heavy on my earlobes, unfamiliar after months of not wearing jewelry. But I wanted to look nice. I wanted them to see me as more than just old mom who needed taking care of. I wanted to be Dorothy again, just for one evening. Vanessa had arrived with her hair freshly done, wearing perfume that was too sweet, too strong. She'd kissed my cheek and said, "Everything smells amazing, Mom. You really outdid yourself." Her voice had been warm, affectionate. I'd believed it. God help me, I'd believed every word. During dinner, Benjamin had told stories about his father, about memories I'd helped him preserve. He'd smiled at me across the table, raised his wine glass in a toast. "To Mom," he'd said, "the strongest woman I know. We're so lucky to have you." And I'd felt my eyes water, felt my throat close with emotion. I'd thought maybe I was wrong to doubt them. Maybe they really do care. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. And then during dessert, the chess pie I'd made from scratch, Vanessa had leaned close. Her perfume had overwhelmed me, made my eyes water for a different reason. She'd put her hand on my shoulder, squeezed gently, and brought her lips close to my ear. I'd thought she was going to tell me the pie was delicious, or thank me for the meal, or share some small confidence. Instead, she'd whispered, "Rest in peace, Dorothy." The words had been so soft, so gentle, like a prayer, like a blessing, and I'd smiled because I thought I'd heard wrong, thought she'd said, "Rest in peace," thought she was being kind. I'd patted her hand, grateful for the affection, and she'd straightened up and gone back to eating her pie like nothing had happened. Benjamin had glanced at her. Just a quick look. There and gone. At the time, I thought he was checking if she was enjoying the food. Now I knew he'd been checking if she'd done it. If she'd said the words, they'd probably laughed about in private. And she'd been practicing for my funeral, rehearsing how it would feel to say those words over my body, testing them out on my living, breathing, trusting self. My body shut down. Not my heart, though for a moment I thought it might stop. But something deeper froze. My legs went numb. My vision narrowed to a single point. I couldn't breathe right, couldn't pull in full breaths. Just shallow gasps that didn't fill my lungs. I set the laptop down exactly where it had been, screen still glowing, messages still visible. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I walked to my bedroom on legs that didn't feel like mine. The hallway seemed longer than usual, the walls closing in. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, a dull thud that matched my footsteps. The afternoon light coming through the window at the end of the hall looked strange, too bright, like I was seeing the world through water. I lay down on top of the covers, fully dressed, shoes still on. And I stared at the ceiling for 6 hours. The ceiling has a water stain in the corner, shaped like a bird in flight. I'd noticed it years ago, back when my husband was alive. Back when we'd laugh about the shapes we saw in ordinary things. He'd said it looked like an eagle. I'd said it looked like a dove. We'd agreed to disagree, the way married people do about small, meaningless things that somehow matter. I stared at that stain and thought about all the times I'd lain in this bed. The night my husband died, when the hospital called at 3 a.m. The night Benjamin graduated from high school, when I'd been so proud I couldn't sleep. The night of my baptism, when I'd felt washed clean and new. This bed had held so many versions of me. Dorothy the wife, Dorothy the mother, Dorothy the believer. Now it was holding Dorothy the fool. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Tears require feeling, and I'd gone beyond feeling into some vast numbness where nothing touched me. I just disappeared into myself, into the space where Dorothy Richardson used to be. The Dorothy who believed in people. The Dorothy who trusted her family. The Dorothy who thought suffering had meaning, that Dorothy died on my bed that Thursday afternoon. She just stopped existing. I could hear the house settling around me, the old pipes clicking, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the wind rattling the window in its frame. Ordinary sounds of an ordinary day. But everything felt different now, like I was hearing them from underwater, from some place far removed from normal life. Benjamin came home around 6. I heard the front door open, heard his keys hit the bowl in the entryway. His footsteps crossed the living room, paused in the kitchen. I heard him open the refrigerator, close it, heard the microwave beep as he heated something up. Then his footsteps came down the hall. I closed my eyes, tried to make my breathing even and slow. The bedroom door opened. "Mom, you okay?" His voice was casual, unconcerned. The voice of a son checking on his elderly mother. Not the voice of someone who'd been systematically destroying my life. I didn't answer. I couldn't make my voice work. Couldn't bear to hear what would come out if I tried. "Taking a nap? Good. You need rest." There was that word again. Rest. The door closed. His footsteps retreated. I heard the television turn on in the living room. Heard the familiar sounds of the evening news. He was living his life in my house while he waited for me to die. Eating food bought with my money. Sitting on furniture my husband and I had chosen together. Planning my funeral while I was still breathing. I lay there until midnight. Then I got up, walked to the kitchen, drank a glass of water, and went back to bed. I didn't speak to him. I didn't look at him. I couldn't bear to see his face. But here's the thing about rock bottom. When you're there, you can either stay down or you can push up. And something in me, some stubborn part that they hadn't managed to erase, started pushing. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark and I thought about everything, every document I'd signed, every friend who'd disappeared. Every time they'd told me I was confused or forgetful or not quite right, every smile that hadn't reached their eyes, every hug that felt like a noose tightening. And I got angry, not sad, not hurt, angry, pure, clean, clarifying rage. The anger felt like fire in my chest, like something hot and alive, burning away the fog they'd wrapped around my brain. It felt like waking up after a long sleep, like coming back to life. I lay there in the dark and let the anger fill me, let it burn away the doubt and the guilt and the desperate need to believe they still loved me. Because they didn't love me. Maybe they never had. Maybe Benjamin had learned this from watching his father die, learned that people are temporary, and you take what you can while they're here. Maybe Vanessa had seen me as a resource from the first day she met me. Maybe Marcus was just following their example, learning that family is something you use up and throw away. It didn't matter why. What mattered was what I was going to do about it. By morning, I had a plan, or at least the beginning of one. I needed help. I needed someone who would believe me, who wouldn't think I was a confused old woman making up stories. But who? My friends were gone. The church people thought I had dementia. I had no family except the ones betraying me. The answer came from the most unexpected place. My son's first wife, Rebecca. Benjamin and Rebecca had divorced 12 years ago when Marcus was 4. It had been ugly. Accusations flew. Benjamin claimed Rebecca was unstable, controlling, paranoid. She'd claimed he was manipulative and financially abusive. I'd taken my son's side, of course. What mother wouldn't? I'd testified for him in the custody hearing. I'd helped him paint Rebecca as unfit. Now I wondered if I'd been wrong about everything. I sat at my kitchen table on Friday morning, staring at my phone. I still had Rebecca's number from years ago. I'd kept it, told myself it was in case of emergency, in case something happened to Marcus and I needed to reach her. I'd never called it, never even thought about calling it. Now I pulled up her contact and stared at her name on the screen. Rebecca Chen. I remembered meeting her when Benjamin first brought her home. She'd been so bright, so full of energy. A nurse at Pennsylvania Hospital, working night shifts and still finding time to volunteer at a free clinic. She'd made Benjamin laugh, made him better somehow. Or so I'd thought. Then the marriage had fallen apart, and Benjamin had told me things. How she checked his phone constantly, how she accused him of lying about money, how she refused to let him make decisions, questioned everything, made him feel small. I'd believed him. I'd sided with him at the custody hearing, told the judge that Rebecca seemed unstable, that Marcus would be better off with his father. Rebecca had looked at me across the courtroom that day. I remember her face, not angry, just sad, disappointed, like she'd expected better from me and I'd let her down. I'd looked away, told myself I was doing the right thing, protecting my son. Now I wondered if I'd been protecting the wrong person all along. Rebecca called me on a Friday morning. I almost didn't answer because the number wasn't saved in my phone, and Benjamin had warned me about scam calls. But something made me pick up. "Dorothy, it's Rebecca. Please don't hang up." My first instinct was to do exactly that. Hang up. These people had turned me against her, but my hand wouldn't move. "I heard through a mutual friend that you're not doing well," she continued. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me. I know what Ben told you about me. But I need you to listen for just 1 minute." I don't know why I stayed on the line. Maybe because I had nothing left to lose. Maybe because her voice sounded like mine felt, tired and wary and done with pretending. "He did the same thing to me," she said. "The isolation, the financial control, convincing me I was crazy, making me doubt my own memory. By the time I left, I didn't know which way was up. It took me years to recover, and I've always felt guilty that I left you alone with him. I should have warned you. I should have tried harder to make you see." I started crying, not the gentle tears I'd cried in church or over old photographs. Hard, wrenching sobs that shook my whole body. All the tears I hadn't cried yesterday came pouring out while Rebecca stayed on the line, quiet, letting me break. "I'm sorry," I managed to say between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I testified against you. I helped him take Marcus. I should have listened to you. Dorothy, it's okay. He's very good at this. He makes you believe him. That's what he does." "It's not okay. I was wrong. I was so wrong." "Then let's make it right," Rebecca said gently. "Tell me what's happening." When I could finally speak, I told her everything. The loans, the bills, the isolation, Marcus's laptop, the group chat, the anniversary dinner. Rest in peace. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel her processing everything I'd said. "Dorothy, I still have documents from our divorce, evidence of what he did to me. Financial records showing he opened credit cards in my name, emails where he tried to gaslight me about things I knew were true. And I know people, lawyers who specialize in this kind of thing, advocates who believe women like us. Will you let me help you?" I said yes. What else could I say? No one else was offering. She came to my house the next day, a Saturday, when Benjamin and Vanessa took Marcus to a baseball game. I watched from the window as she pulled up in a modest Honda, not the fancy car I remembered her driving before the divorce. She got out slowly, looked at the house for a long moment before walking to the door. When I opened it, we just stood there for a moment, looking at each other. She was older, of course. 12 years had added lines around her eyes, threads of silver in her black hair. But she still had that directness, That way of looking at you like she could see past all the pretending. "Hi, Dorothy," she said quietly. "Hi, Rebecca." And then, I don't know who moved first, but we were hugging. I was crying again, and she was crying too, and we stood there in my doorway, holding each other like survivors of the same war. She brought a lawyer friend named Patricia, who specialized in elder abuse. We sat at my kitchen table, the one my husband built, and I told them everything while Patricia took notes on a yellow legal pad. Her pen scratched across the paper, a sound that felt like progress, like someone was finally writing down my truth. "We need documentation," Patricia said. "Everything they've had you sign, bank statements, loan agreements. We need to build a timeline." "I don't have access to most of that," I told her. "They keep it all locked in Benjamin's office upstairs." Rebecca and Patricia exchanged a look. "Then we get creative," Rebecca said. Over the next 2 weeks, we built a case. Rebecca helped me request copies of documents from banks, from credit card companies, from the county recorder's office. She sat with me while I called institutions I'd supposedly taken loans from, asked for account histories, discovered debts I didn't remember creating. The first call was to Wells Fargo. I sat at my kitchen table with Rebecca beside me, her hand on my shoulder, while I waited on hold. When the representative came on the line, I gave them my information and asked for a complete account history. "I'm showing 3 accounts in your name, Mrs. Richardson," the representative said. 1 checking account opened in 2018 and 2 credit cards opened in 2022 and 2023. "What are the balances on those credit cards?" "The first one shows a balance of $15,340. The second shows $22,180. Both are currently past due." I'd never seen those cards, never used them, never even known they existed. My hands gripped the edge of the table. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder harder. The weight of it hit me all over again. They'd been stealing from me in ways I hadn't even imagined. "Mrs. Richardson, are you still there?" "Yes," I managed. "I'm here. Can you tell me what those cards were used for?" The representative read through the charges: designer clothing stores, electronics retailers, cash advances, restaurant charges from places I'd never been, a cruise to the Caribbean I'd never taken. They'd been living their best lives on credit cards they'd opened in my name, knowing I'd never see the bills because they controlled all the mail. When I hung up, I put my head in my hands. Rebecca didn't try to comfort me with empty words. She just sat there, her hand steady on my back, letting me feel it all. "How many more calls do we have to make?" I asked. Patricia consulted her list. 6 more banks, 3 credit unions, 2 car loan companies. Every call revealed another layer of deception. Every conversation with a customer service representative peeled back another lie. By the end of that day, we discovered over $180 in fraudulent debt. My head pounded. My voice was hoarse from talking, but we kept going. We documented everything in notebooks, 4 of them, with dates and amounts and names. Patricia showed me how to save emails, how to take screenshots, how to create a paper trail. Rebecca taught me how to use my phone's voice recorder, how to casually record conversations without being obvious. The woman I had been before them started waking up. And she remembered how to fight. Benjamin and Vanessa didn't notice what I was doing. Why would they? I was just confused, old mom, resting like they'd told me to, staying out of the way. They didn't notice when I started recording conversations on my phone. They didn't notice when I photographed documents they left lying around. They didn't notice that the fog they'd wrapped around my brain was lifting. But I noticed everything. I noticed how Vanessa's new clothes cost more than my monthly Social Security check. I noticed the champagne gold Lexus LS that appeared in my driveway one Tuesday, the one Benjamin claimed to be leasing, but had actually purchased using a loan in my name. I noticed Marcus's new gaming computer, his new phone, the college application fees they were paying while telling me we couldn't afford to fix my broken washing machine. I noticed that I was financing their entire lives while they waited for mine to end. One evening, I recorded a conversation with Benjamin about the house payments. He didn't know my phone was recording in my cardigan pocket. Mom, I've told you this before. The payments are high because of the foundation repairs, remember? We had to take out that loan or the house would have been condemned. But Benjamin, I don't remember the repairs being done. When did workers come? He sighed, that patient sigh I'd come to hate. Mom, you're forgetting again. They were here for 3 weeks last summer. You were at Sister Margaret's during the day because of the noise. I'd never stayed with Sister Margaret. That was a lie. But I said, of course, I'm sorry. I just get confused. I know, Mom. That's why Vanessa and I handle these things for you now. Later that night, I played the recording for Rebecca. She closed her eyes, shook her head. He's so smooth. He's gotten better at it. He's practicing on me, I said, perfecting his technique. On a Monday morning in April, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I got up early, put on my golden mustard sweater and my good jeans, applied lipstick for the first time in months, and walked to the bus stop. Not to go grocery shopping, to go to the county courthouse. Patricia met me there. We filed for an emergency protective order and a petition to invalidate the power of attorney Benjamin had convinced me to sign. We filed fraud complaints with 3 different banks. We started the process of reclaiming my life. The courthouse felt enormous and intimidating. High ceilings and echoing halls and people in suits hurrying past with important documents. But Patricia guided me through it, her hand on my elbow, explaining each form, each signature, each step. This is the hardest part, she said as we waited in line to file the papers. Once you do this, there's no going back. He'll know you're fighting. Are you ready? I thought about Vanessa whispering in my ear, about the group chat, about 3 years of my life stolen from me. I'm ready, I said. But that wasn't enough. Not for what they'd done, not for 3 years of systematic erasure, not for whispering rest in peace in my ear like I was already dead. I wanted everyone to know. Rebecca helped me write it all out. Every detail, every document, every lie. We scanned everything, created a timeline, wrote captions. On a Thursday afternoon, I posted it all publicly on my Facebook account, the one I hadn't used in 2 years because they'd told me social media was too confusing for me. My hands shook as I typed. Rebecca sat beside me, reading over my shoulder, occasionally suggesting a clearer way to phrase something. We worked for hours, crafting the perfect post. Not dramatic, not emotional, just facts. Clear, documented, undeniable facts. I tagged Community Baptist Church. I tagged Benjamin's employer. I tagged Vanessa's workplace. I tagged mutual friends, neighbors, extended family. The post was simple. My name is Dorothy Richardson. I'm 71 years old, and for the last 3 years my son and daughter-in-law have been systematically stealing my money, my home, and my identity. Here is the proof. Then I attached everything. Screenshots of the group chat, bank statements showing transactions I never authorized, loan documents with my forged signature, photos of the Lexus LS with its registration showing my name as owner despite never having seen the purchase agreement, a recording of Vanessa telling a church friend that I had dementia and shouldn't be trusted. And I shared the anniversary dinner message, the rest in peace message, word for word, with the date stamp showing it was sent the day after they'd sat at my table and eaten my food. Are you sure? Rebecca asked, her finger hovering over the mouse. I looked at the screen, at my words, at the evidence of my son's betrayal laid out for the world to see. I'm sure, I said. I hit share and closed the laptop and sat there in my kitchen, touching my cross necklace, and waited. The response was immediate. The post was shared 50 times in the first hour, 100 times by evening, 200 by midnight. People I hadn't spoken to in years started commenting, started sharing their own suspicions, started admitting they'd thought something was wrong, but hadn't known how to help. Sister Margaret called crying, apologizing for believing Vanessa's lies. The church secretary sent me screenshots of emails Vanessa had sent claiming I was unstable and needed intervention. The local news picked it up the next day. A reporter came to my house while Benjamin and Vanessa were at work. I told her everything on camera. The story ran that night. Local woman exposes family elder abuse scheme. They showed the Lexus in my driveway. They showed the stack of bills on my kitchen table. They interviewed Patricia about warning signs of financial exploitation. Benjamin's employer called him in for a meeting that same day. He worked in the accounting department of a nonprofit. They couldn't have someone managing their books who was under investigation for financial fraud. He was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Vanessa's workplace, a hospital where she worked in patient billing, was less formal. They just fired her. Quietly. Effectively. Someone in that position couldn't be associated with financial fraud, they said. It was a matter of trust. Their friends stopped answering calls. Marcus's baseball coach, who'd known our family for years, suggested maybe Marcus would be more comfortable on a different team. Neighbors who used to wave stopped making eye contact. The church board called an emergency meeting. Benjamin and Vanessa tried to fight back. They posted their own statement on Facebook claiming I was suffering from dementia and Rebecca was manipulating me. But by then, Patricia had already filed the medical records showing I'd passed a cognitive assessment with flying colors. Their lies had nowhere left to hide. They moved out of my house on a Wednesday. I watched from the kitchen window as they loaded boxes into a U-Haul. The champagne Lexus parked behind it. Useless now because they couldn't afford the payments. Benjamin didn't knock on the door to say goodbye. Vanessa didn't even look at the house. Marcus, poor Marcus, looked back once, his face confused and ashamed. I should have felt sorry for him. He was just a kid caught in his parents' scheme. But he'd known. He'd participated. He'd asked when they could cash out. So I watched them leave and felt nothing. That evening, I called a locksmith. Changing the locks on my own front door was simple. 20 minutes, $200, and suddenly the house was mine again. I stood in the doorway after the locksmith left, holding the new keys, and I felt more powerful than I had in years. Maybe ever. The justice I wanted wasn't just legal, though that came too. Patricia helped me sue to invalidate all the loans they'd taken out in my name. The courts agreed, found evidence of forgery and fraud, transferred the debts back to Benjamin and Vanessa. They'll be paying those off for decades. My credit was restored. My house was freed from liens. My bank accounts, once they tracked down where all the money had gone, started the process of recovery. But the real justice was external, communal, the kind that sinks into your skin and stays there. Community Baptist Church asked Benjamin to step down from his position as deacon. The congregation that had seen him grow up, that had celebrated his achievements, now saw him for what he was. The church elder who'd baptized him wouldn't shake his hand. Sister Margaret, who'd taught him in Sunday school, crossed the street when she saw him coming. Vanessa couldn't show her face at the grocery store without people whispering. Our neighborhood, the rural outskirts where everyone knows everyone's business, shunned them. Nobody would look them in the eye. Nobody would speak to them except to tell them to leave. They moved to another state. I heard through Rebecca they're living in a small apartment, both working minimum wage jobs, trying to rebuild credit that's destroyed. Marcus lives with his maternal grandparents now, finishing high school somewhere far from here. I hope he makes better choices than his parents, but that's not my problem anymore. My rebirth came slowly, in small moments that built on each other. I went back to choir practice on a Wednesday evening in May. My voice was rusty, weaker than it used to be, but Sister Margaret hugged me tight and said, "We missed you, Dorothy. It wasn't the same without you." The choir room smelled the same as I remembered. Old hymnals and furniture polish, and the faint sweetness of the communion wine stored in the sacristy next door. The other women welcomed me back with hugs and tears, apologizing for believing the lies, for not checking on me more. I forgave them. What else could I do? They'd been manipulated too. I sang Amazing Grace that Sunday, and I cried through the whole thing, but I sang every note clear and true. My voice cracked on the high notes, wavered on the long ones, but it was my voice, Dorothy's voice, and it was enough. I started organizing the church food drive again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. because it reminded me of who I was before they tried to erase me. Dorothy Richardson, volunteer coordinator. Dorothy Richardson, woman who gives a damn. I'm saving money now. My money, in my accounts, that I manage myself. I check the balance every morning like it's a miracle, which it is. I'm saving for a country house with land and space to breathe, somewhere I can see the horizon, somewhere I can plant a garden and watch things grow, somewhere no one will ever make me feel small again. And sometimes, just for fun, I drive to the Lexus dealership in my borrowed car and sit in the LS in champagne gold. I don't plan to buy it. I don't even particularly want it anymore. But I like sitting in something they used to own, something they bought with my money, something they lost. I like the feeling of possibility, of choice, of freedom. I thought justice would make me feel different, lighter somehow. But mostly, I just feel tired. Not the exhausted fog they kept me in, but the good tired that comes from fighting and winning, from surviving and rebuilding, from refusing to disappear just because they wanted me to. The cross necklace I've worn since my baptism sits against my chest, familiar weight. My faith changed through this, not destroyed, but transformed. I still believe in God. I still pray every night. But I pray different prayers now. I pray for strength instead of patience. I pray for wisdom instead of endurance. I pray for clarity instead of blind trust. And sometimes I pray for them, for Benjamin and Vanessa, that they'll understand what they did and feel something like remorse. But mostly I pray for me, for healing, for peace that comes from knowing my own worth. What I need everyone listening to this to understand is that isolation is a tactic. Recognizing when someone separates you from loved ones is critical. That's how it starts. Not with violence, not with obvious abuse, with whispers, with concern that sounds like love, but feels like a cage. They make you doubt the people who care about you. They make you doubt yourself. They convince you that you're the problem, that you're difficult, that you're too much or not enough or just not quite right. And you believe them because you want to believe the best in people. Because you think family is supposed to mean something. Because you think suffering has a purpose, and if you just endure long enough, things will get better. But suffering doesn't have a purpose unless you give it one. And sometimes the purpose is to learn who not to trust, who to cut out of your life completely, blood or not. Studies reveal that having 4 or more traumas increases the risk of depression 4 to 12 times. 4 traumas. I stopped counting mine after I reached double digits: the betrayal, the isolation, the financial abuse, the gaslighting, the constant message that I was less than, other than, not quite human enough to deserve basic dignity. Each one left a mark. Each one changed how my brain works, how I see the world, how I trust or don't trust. But it's worse than that. The damage doesn't end with you. Genetic research reveals that children of Holocaust survivors showed gene changes even without living through the trauma. The pain we carry changes us at the cellular level, and we can pass it on. Marcus carries this now, what his parents did, what he witnessed. Even if he never speaks to me again, even if he forgets most of it, it's in him, in his DNA, in how he'll form relationships and trust people and handle conflict. My trauma became his trauma, became his children's trauma, on and on, generation after generation. That's why you have to fight back. Not someday. Not when it gets bad enough, because by then you might not have the strength. Now, today, the moment you realize something is wrong, before you forget who you were, before they make you disappear. I'm 71 years old, and I lost 3 years of my life to people who claimed to love me. But I got something back too. Myself. Dorothy Richardson, who isn't confused or forgetful or not quite right, who is sharp and capable and strong enough to tear down the lies and build something new from the rubble. Winter is over now. Spring came while I was fighting. Soon it'll be summer, and the windows won't fog up anymore, and I'll be able to see clearly all the way to the horizon. I've been thinking about taking a trip, maybe out west, where the sky is even bigger. Maybe to visit Rebecca, who saved my life by believing me when no one else would. Maybe just to drive with no destination, windows down, radio loud, proving to myself that I can go anywhere. I still make cornbread sometimes. But now I make it because I want to, because it reminds me of good things instead of manipulation. The smell fills my kitchen, and I sit at the table my husband built, and I eat warm bread with butter and honey, and I think about all the dinners that table has seen, all the conversations, all the lies and truths and everything in between. And I think about that anniversary dinner, about Vanessa leaning close, about the words she whispered that she meant as cruelty, but that became my wake-up call. Rest in peace, like I was already dead, like I was already gone. But I'm not gone. I'm right here, alive and angry and free. So let me ask you something. Where are you listening from right now? What's your story? Have you ever felt like you were disappearing inside your own life? Have you ever trusted someone who was slowly erasing you? Drop a comment and tell me. Tell me where you're from. Tell me if you've ever been where I was. Tell me what you would have done differently, or the same, or what advice you'd give to someone starting to realize they're not crazy. The people around them are just trying to make them think they are. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something or think about someone you need to check on, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because I've got more stories to tell, and maybe one of them will be the one that saves someone's life the way Rebecca saved mine. You're not alone. You're not confused. You're not too sensitive or too difficult or too much. You're probably exactly right about what you suspect. Trust yourself. Document everything. Find someone who believes you and fight back before they convince you that you can't. I'm Dorothy Richardson. I'm 71 years old. I'm a choir soloist, a church volunteer, a survivor. And I'm still here, still standing, still singing. Rest in peace. Not today, not ever. I've got too much living left to do.